Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you again for this Locked On Texas Tech special edition. It's the Matador Mob Mailbag. Questions from you, the mob. And we appreciate all those that were sent our way. We'll get to as many as possible today, covering a variety of subjects. Of course, Chris will talk some Texas Tech football, getting ready to wrap up spring camp, or maybe it's already been wrapped, depending upon when you're taking in this conversation. I want to get to a breakdown in one of the more interesting position groups, kind of been overshadowed because of all the other additions elsewhere, but you are replacing, your program's all-time leading rusher. So how are things going to be split up in the backfield in the fall? We'll get to a question regarding that. Also want to get to some continued pursuits in the basketball portal. And now at this time, how do we sit still looking out for a ball handler, looking out for a big man? Maybe what are the odds to find a better one in either of those categories at this point in the portal window? But I want to kick off the conversation with a question about something that I think we had alluded to, and really we've kind of gone back and forth the last maybe week, 10 days, feeling one way, feeling a different way, and now we officially see Federico in the transfer portal. And we had this question from a couple of different folks. We had Cindy, we had Brian, we had Scott also asking essentially, why Federico? What was not connecting here? And I don't know, you tell me, Chris, is the conversation even over as far as Federico's time at Texas Tech yet? But if it is, what do you think maybe wasn't connecting that led to this move now from him?
I'm sure we will find out more as time goes along. I would say you're probably right in suggesting that it's not over. I wouldn't totally rule out his return, but the fact that you've gotten to this point would suggest to me that probably unlikely. I think that earlier this past week, I felt like that was close to being done, if not already done. But obviously that it wasn't the case. That is not accurate. I don't think it is finances. And I say that simply because you're still very actively working with this player's agent or agency. You've got people on campus, as you and I sit here and talk, that are represented by the same agent or agency. And so I don't think it had to do with, but I couldn't tell you. It's a bit bizarre to me. I don't know if this is a player that, if he's looking for more of a role, if he's looking to be located somewhere different, maybe with somebody different. Is there a teammate that he would prefer to play with that may no longer be here? I mean, I think all that would be on the table, and I guess we will kind of find out together a bit. But it is. I do think this is a player that you wanted to retain. I don't think it's just devastating that you lose it or lose him as long as he is ably replaced. And I think you could. I mean, I'm not trying to take a shot here, but I think you can upgrade there. And people have suggested, there's not anybody in the portal. No, you're wrong. There's plenty of options and plenty of different skill sets, plenty of size in the portal that you can go get that could, be an upgrade or same as. I mean, this is a player that averaged basically 5 points and 3 rebounds in conference play. I think he was a good teammate, and that's what and I think Grant was appreciative for his contributions and his attitude and his, just the way he rolled. And, Grant talked about all the time. The guy comes in with the same mood and same mindset, same smile all the time. And I think that's a pleasure for a coach when you're going to give me all that you've got every day. And I think that was the case with Federico. And maybe that part will be very difficult to replace. But this is a player that obviously is seeking something different. And maybe it does come down to finances. Maybe it does come down to role. Maybe it does come down to a relationship with a coach or a teammate, current or former, that he would rather do life with, and that is the situation. But he is officially in the portal, and again, you can't close the book on it, but it seems unlikely that he would return here. So, and I would just lastly say we'll kind of find out in time, kind of what the situation was, what there was, because it was a bit confusing to me for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was so it kind of went so far back and forth. There was one point earlier in the week where we kicked out an episode a little earlier than usual because we were talking about Federico, and we were anticipating maybe something coming to light as far as an announcement of some kind or something like that, even before we were typically going to publish that episode. So we said, let's get it out. And then we're still waiting. And then you get a totally different announcement like, hey, he's headed for the portal. So you never know exactly how to predict these moves within transfer season. And yeah, the conversation not quite over just yet, but maybe seems like it's not going to work out in that fashion that we anticipated at one point in time. And this question is kind of tied into this Federico conversation. We had a few folks asking about these pursuits. Lane and Andrew, also Evan, was asking about, is it going to be tougher to find at this point in the window a good big or a good ball handler? How do you feel about those two?
Well, I think the bigger role that you're trying to seek is another guard that can facilitate. I've seen it stated that Christian Henderson is not a primary ball handler. I don't know what anybody's watching. I would strongly disagree with that sentiment, but he can't do it all by himself. And you need somebody that takes the pressure off or adds to it or is a sidekick who is, whether it's primary or next to or however you want to phrase that, you need someone else. And that role is going to be asked to be a bit more for your team, in my opinion, than what the Federico role would be. But again, this is all based on what you go get and bring in here too. I think that this comes in all different shapes and sizes as far as experience or upside, or this guy's more offensive minded or defensive minded or a role player or whatever you want to look at it. But I think that, so I don't know if I'm, so probably guard, just because I think that player will be asked to do a lot more, and that player will have the most to do with if you're successful or not this season. Not that the big won't, but I think that you'll lean on whoever this guard would be a bit more, in my opinion. And that's why I think that, I don't want to say harder to find, but there's more importance placed on that, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so you may be a bit pickier there, or trying to find the right skill set, whereas and I'm not saying that at all trying to find the right big guy is going to be easy with what you want or what you're going to ask him to do. And again, finances come into play here, perceived role comes into play, as we've talked about. And but they will, do you go young, do you go old, do you go really expensive, do you go try to throw some mashed potatoes at the wall and bring in a couple of guys and see who emerges? I mean, all that would be on the table here, as you've got some roster spots still to fill.
I was curious, since we were last together, you have seen an addition in the form of the Villanova guard or the Villanova transfer. And I remember the way that you described him a little bit last week as far as a potential role for next season. So we've had this question also. He's not really one, I guess, that fits into what we're still talking about here. Is that right?
Yeah, Josiah Mosley is who you're talking about. He's originally from Round Rock. I think he's got there's some familiarity there with your staff, with him as a high school prospect. I think obviously Grant saw him in some of the Team USA stuff that he was doing last summer and things like that. They're very familiar. I will say this. I do think Josiah Mosley is, I don't know if I want to say he's like a backup to Lawan Watts right now, as your team is currently constructed. Again, constructed. I do think, though, this is a player that is good enough to actually play for you in games and in meaningful games. And I don't know what that looks like. Is that 5 minutes? Is that 15 minutes? Is that 22 minutes? I think that you had players on your roster last year that it was pretty clear we have an 8-man rotation, and when some guys in that 8-man rotation aren't healthy enough to play, that rotation simply just shrinks. We don't pop in another one. The only exception to that was Leon Horner at the Big 12 tournament, when you just tried to get eight minutes or so of just some relief and put him out there, and he did very good defensively. I think Josiah Mosley I would think is better than that and would play a little bit as we go along here. This is a lot of upside. He's got, this is somebody that was a very high ranked recruit, and now you're going to try to squeeze a bit more out of him. And he's 6'7", about 200, a little over that, and very good athlete. And so I think that, he definitely gives you some protection, some insurance, somebody you can develop and things like that. So I think he's a bit of an upgrade over the bench pieces you had last year, maybe even a big upgrade over the bench pieces you had last year.
Kind of noticing a consistent little trend here in 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", some of these additions we've seen on the perimeter, and we'll see how it works out when you actually get on the floor. But if there was a desire for some more length, I think you have technically added a little bit of that. Obviously, with a team that we all thought was small, you wind up a couple shots away from the Final Four. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, I suppose. But yeah, we think length is good. This question from
one last thing there. Is this a much younger, unpolished, less experienced version of, say, like what Devin Cambridge was supposed to be last year?
First, today's episode brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and a whole lot more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Plus, it's fast and easy. You can post a job free and simply, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates are there to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's at UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
Is this a much younger, unpolished, less experienced version of, say, like what Devin Cambridge was supposed to be last year? Because you keep in mind, you were supposed to have a 9-man rotation last year, and Devin Cambridge was this piece that you could go small with him, you could go big with him, you could do a variety of different things, and it gives a coach more options. And Josiah Mosley, if he'll improve and take to coaching and all the things. By the way, his commitment announcement, the AI image that he popped out there was just flawless. I mean, it's one of the best I have ever seen in my many years of doing this. It was essentially perfect. I mean, chef kisses to whoever came up with that. Josiah, if that was all you, kudos, sir. That was extremely, extremely well done. Hang it in the Louvre, man, because that was an all-timer as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it was just perfect. It was a vibe, as a matter of fact. I just loved it. But yeah, maybe there's.
Wow, I can tell this. You're really impacted by this.
I was like, this is perfect. In a day where everybody does graphics or all these things, or like, I'd like to thank everybody. It was just simple. It was great. Like, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It had some detail to it. He was saying goodbye to one place, hello to another, and it was just this cartoon image. It was just, I don't know, it was great. I enjoyed it. But maybe he's a Devin Cambridge type, just much younger, with a ton of upside. And if that's the case, then I think that's maybe how you could utilize him.
Man, you really got to be feeling for these guys that were making lives out of making edits and graphics for these kids, which is a weird way to do it, a weird thing to go about. But the AI, big shot to that industry, I guess. No longer going to be needing that. Landon asking, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to saddle up with this question myself, because I'm pretty fuzzy on Mr. Akuntak. Landon's asking, is Akuntak an obvious replacement to a guy like Federico, still looking into the portal for another addition? Could you just give us some context on what a Kuntak is viewed as internally? Because he's, aside from what his measurables are, which we can all look up on the internet, he's almost just a mystery to me as to how he could be factoring in or how they expect him to factor in.
I don't think you're ready to say that just yet. I think this is again, it's all based on expectations, and I think it would be a big gamble to think that he could step in and provide what, say, a Federico could. I envision him as maybe a better, taller version of what EY was. He's got a great looking shot. I think he's longer. And he's maybe a more skilled player, but again, he's young. And again, I would say that, like, if Josiah Mosley is like ninth in an 8-man rotation, or maybe you have a 9-man rotation, like a guy like a Kuntak potentially would be like a 10th. And again, this is in a normal scenario when everybody's healthy and you're rolling. It doesn't mean that guys will play their way into more minutes or out of more minutes or whatever. I just know, based on what we've seen from Grant all these years, it's, you know, and you're trying to put together a team that not only contends for the Big 12 championship, but much more than that. And it would be a gamble to lean on too many young and inexperienced players, but I don't want to take anything away from that either, because they can go do the Christian Anderson thing and put a cape on and just be unbelievably good, like Christian Anderson was. But that's a bit of a gamble, I guess, when you have more spots to fill, and I think some more of your rev share and other things to be able to allocate toward players coming into this thing. I think you'll seek more of a sure thing out there. That would be my guess.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Zach was asking about this. Evan asking about this also. Some preseason and or way too early hype that Texas Tech is now on the receiving end of as a basketball program. Evan saying, I've been seeing some way too early top 25s, Tech 3-1, 6 in another. Zach was asking about this and the chip on the shoulder mentality, how it might impact, the underdog type of motivation. So what are you thinking, man? You're a Tech fan just like we all are. There's the coverage aspect of the way you view the Red Raiders. I know there's the fan aspect also. And this is some uncharted territory. I mean, you've wound up in some great spots in recent seasons, but the preseason or way too early hype train is often running like I don't really remember ever seeing it before.
Yeah, I think you're getting a lot of street cred from your lengthy run this past year. I think that JT Toppin has the biggest to do with your outlook or the media's outlook as they put the Red Raiders in the top 5 or 10 or whatever it is. I think it remains to be seen on what others, because again, as we sit here and talk, the portal is still open. Yeah. Not everybody that is going to get in has gotten in yet. So keep that in mind. And I think that this has a chance to ebb and flow a bit, and you may drop or you could even go up. But the one, so a lot of this is going to be out of your control. What do others add that could bump you down without you even doing anything? But the biggest thing is, what guard do you add? That's gonna ultimately determine whether the media, I think, looks at it and goes, okay, they've now checked the box on having somebody that can make some things happen, that can score, facilitate, whatever, and that could raise your profile if anything. And I think a lot of these were pre-Federico getting into the portal. I don't think he would move the needle a ton there, as long as he's there's a comparable replacement in place. But I think it's been pretty interesting. But I think JT Toppin has the most to do with kind of what, and Grant. I don't want to, and Grant would probably tell you, yeah, it has a lot to do with JT Toppin. But I think Grant's getting a lot of credit here too, because I think that people are seeing this is a phenomenal coach that really has done a really, really good job. And now that he's got Jeff Linder next to him, and look what they do on offense, look what they do on defense. And the perception is you've done really well in the portal to this point too. But JT and probably Grant have the most to do with kind of, and Christian, I guess, to a certain extent. I mean, there's people out there that will tell you Christian Anderson may be I don't know if like preseason, but the eventuality is he's going to be a first team All Big 12 guard, and I don't disagree with that.
No, I think those type of expectations will be justified. Apologies to Mr. Anderson, but this is kind of your own fault. We're already thinking this way in a sophomore campaign. When you do what you did as a freshman, it's hard not to run wild with some exciting expectations. All right, before we move away from the big man convo, just one more question from Drew asking about, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, any word on the 2026 center recruit we've been linked to in Micah Murinen? Am I even close to that being correct?
Yeah. So this is the 6'10", 6'11" kid that is at a prep school in Arizona. I think he's originally from, I think I'm right here. I think he's originally from Finland. This is also represented by the same agent or agency that EY and Federico and all the like there. I believe he is on campus now, I believe. But here's your little tidbit. This is a player that saw the Red Raiders play in San Francisco.
Oh.
He was in attendance, just checking out the old Red Raiders in San Francisco in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. And there were people that bumped into him and didn't know who he was. And you see this big old 6'10", 6'11" kid walking around the concourse. They're like, "Hey man, you who do you play for? Where do you play ball at?" And he's like, "Oh, I go to this prep school in Arizona." And "What are you doing here?" "Well, I'm here watching Texas Tech." So you file that away on. Okay. Now he's somebody that there was some discussion about reclassification and could he join you immediately. I gather, I don't want to rule anything out. I gather he's more of along the lines of somebody that would ultimately commit and then sign this coming November for next year, a 26 kid, I guess we would say. Again, I wouldn't just rule out any possibilities there, but that's what I gather. So, but he's clearly got an interest in Texas Tech.
You may have just answered this with the background on that kid, but actually had questions from Zach, Mark, also Lance asking about, does Texas Tech have a specific intention to target international prospects, or is that just something that maybe kind of bubbles up here or there? First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs coming up, and FanDuel giving new customers a great way to kickstart the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel, place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Plus, after the game tips off, you still got all kinds of options. You can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big and a whole lot more. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com today and claim your $250 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com.
No, I think your connection there is more with a certain agent or agency in the way that the world works these days, and that's just kind of how it's worked. I think there's some trust there. That's a two-way street. I think that Texas Tech, I think, has built a unbelievable reputation in this NIL world that we live in of taking very good care of players. Specifically, I'm talking football and basketball. And I think agents or agencies are very aware of that and, paying on time, doing what you say you're going to do, because not everybody has operated this way. And I think this benefits you greatly as you are recruiting, and then you create a pipeline and all these different things. So I think that is because you do good business. And so that has certainly helped you. And that's just the way that this particular agent, he's got a pipeline into some international waters. And I think that's just kind of the way it's worked out. You're not being intentional, like, let's go to Finland and find the best prospect we can over there. No, that's not what you're doing.
Okay. Appreciate that question. And let's switch gears here, because we're set to wrap up a spring camp a little bit later on from when we're sitting here having this conversation. Nice little 40-degree Saturday in West Texas to wrap up a spring football camp with. So it's been an interesting camp, I guess, weather-wise. We had a snowstorm a couple of weeks ago, a little whiteout cooked up when you had some coaches in town, and now we'll wrap up with a spring game, roughly 45 degrees. Chris, this probably, much like I kind of feel like this whole thing has gone, sort of under discussed because there's so many different things to point at going on that are exciting about the football program. But one thing that I really don't even know if we've touched on it to this point in the spring, but had a couple of questions about this. Specifically, this one from Jay. What do you think this split is going to look like in the backfield next year between Joyner, Williams, and Dickey? And I don't even know in what order we really should be viewing those types of names. And I think you not too long ago also kept this on the list of groups that could possibly still see additions. But what are you thinking this is looking like as we're still a few months out from the real deal as you try to replace your program's all-time leading rusher?
Yeah, I think this is maybe there's many, and we'll do a lot of this conversation in the coming weeks and really months, I guess, as we build up to the 2025 season. But briefly here, I think this is kind of an underutilized storyline that maybe we haven't discussed a bunch. Is like, what's your bread and butter going to be? Who's your bell cow? Like when it's hitting the fan, or you got to get something, like who you throwing it to, who you handing it to. I don't know the answer to that, and I think that it's replacing Taj Brooks is not going to be easy. It just isn't, and I hope that we hear his name called in the next week or so as it relates to the NFL draft. It's a very deep draft for running backs, a ton of which are from the Big 12 conference. But as it relates to the backfield that you've got currently constructed, and I think it's important to know currently, because it's not going to surprise me if there's a bit of an addition, maybe a subtraction as it relates to somebody like Cameron Valdez. Don't know. We'll see. But let's just go with the three guys that you've got that have been practicing. Is I would guess Quentin Joyner probably has the best chance to get the most carries. I think Jacoby Williams is not my answer there just because of his frame. I think he will absolutely get touches, get carries, all the things, but he's not somebody that would be a primary back because he's just a bit slight, but he's got a lot of juice. I can see you lining him up in the slot, putting him in the backfield, being a primary ball carrier some games, but just not the whole season. As he's working to add to that frame of his. But we saw some of that juice in the bowl game, and it's special. He's got some wheels on him. He's a home run threat. And then Cam Dickey, I think, is somebody that can handle that workload. Cam just needs to be able to – I think he's still figuring out his body a bit. I think he needs to show that he can stay healthy and available and all those things. But Quentin Joyner's kind of got the experience. He's kind of got the total package. But with all of them, who can handle picking up the blitz? Who can handle all the other things? It's not just about carrying the football here. But Coach Leftwich has said, I'm going to use some two-back sets. We're gonna kind of go with the hot hand. We're gonna kind of go with all these guys. I don't think you'll have a scenario where it's like one of them and then everybody else like it was last year with Taj. That is not in the cards, in my opinion. But if you were asking me to break a tie, I would go with Quentin Joyner, who is a home run threat in his own right, who clearly, I think regularly, I should say, like clocks well over 20 miles an hour, 21 miles an hour on the GPS stuff. I mean, he's got some speed, and again, he's got some experience. I mean, this is a player that averaged in a backup role last year at USC over 7 yards a carry. I think he's got a lot that you like and all that. And so that's I guess, succinctly how I would talk about the backfield there.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. This question from Charles. I'd like to know how the young wide receivers are stacking up. Valson, Turner, West, Deaver, Stone. Any chance one of them could even be an answer in the slot?
Yeah, I think a chance. And like Terrence Carter could be an answer in the slot. Jacoby Williams could be an answer in the slot on occasion. I think that what like your Wests and your Valsons and your Turners, it's just about consistency. And there will be people that will say, man, he had a few drops, or maybe he made an unbelievable catch. It's just who can make the routine play all the time and do it regularly, because that's what you need. And that typically comes with experience, which is why you may be looking for said player out there. And again, if there's somebody out there that checks the box, that's got some experience to them, that has some experience, I should say, I think that's where you would be looking very hard to go to the portal for a potential addition here. I don't think you want to. You're not trying to run anybody off here. You're just trying to. We may have a need here. If something is out there that we see as an upgrade, then we're gonna. And it's not a shot at Coy, because Coy is going to be playing some of the slot as well. But he hasn't been healthy for much of the spring. He's got a bit of a back issue, and I think Coy will also fill in on the outside spots too. I think he's kind of one of your top receivers that I think a lot of these guys will be moved around a bit, but I think they're looking for a potential. You're just trying to find whether, if there's a bit of a question there, then maybe you want to go find a bit of an answer. And I don't know if maybe you have all the answers just yet. Does that make sense? It's like, do you want to go at it with Mariella Kuntak at center, or go maybe enhance your chances of finding an answer out there with somebody that's got some experience, that's done it before, that we've seen, and that may be a similar conversation here. So that's why I said that.
Okay. Thank you for that question. This one from Kyle. Is there a biggest change or something that you think that'll stand out that you've noticed in offensive scheme from Coach Kitley now to Coach Leftwich?
I think your wide receivers will line up further outside. I think that they're going to talk a lot about vertical shots. I think Zach was wanting to do that too. You may be able to do that more this year, just because you have a better line up front. I think people just don't realize how extremely average you were up front, and how you were still ranked in the top 10 and top 5 on offense, like yards per game, points scored per game, and all that, considering what you didn't have up front blocking for you, and you had to keep your tight ends in a bit more to block and help out the situation, because I think Zach wanted to go deep a lot more. Barron certainly does, but again, you got to have time to be able to do that. Yeah. But I do think they'll have serious upgrade there. I think you'll have more time to go deep. I think, generally speaking, this isn't necessarily exactly how I would describe it, but think spread run. Think, because there's some Art Briles concepts here. Where the receivers are really lined up really wide, and you're really spreading everybody out to run the ball as much as anything, and then you try to have some speed out there. You try to take shots down the field, but I think he has even stated that he's going to use a lot more of 2 tight end packages, what he would term 12 personnel, than he's ever done before, because of guys like John Carlos Miller and Terrence Carter because he's never had 2 tight ends that are such good pass catchers before. And so I think he'll try to utilize those guys. So I could probably keep rambling, but I think hopefully you get an idea there. And if you watch the spring game, don't take away too many things from said glorified spring practice and say, well, this is what it's going to look like. They will be very strategic with what they show and don't show, even though fans will be there. I don't think you're allowed to take, pictures or video or whatever. They will be very strategic with what they toss out there and things like that. So,
Chris, don't be ridiculous. We will take everything we see this Saturday and then we'll blow it up for months, making everything out of it. So that's kind of the process here. All right. Thank you for that question. This next one from Jason, who says, this may not be for public consumption, but I personally am very curious about the Pop Isaac story. He leaves us. Now he's good enough for Houston. Not privy to much, Jason says, but I'm curious about insights into why he left and why he'd be good enough for Houston, even though we are also looking for another point guard. But to hear the answer to that question, you'll need to be a Matador Mob insider. So hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial to do just that. For those on the outside, this will be where we leave you. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss a thing. And become a Matador Mobster today for less than a cup of coffee a month so you can get the full Mailbag experience next week. Chris, appreciate your time and insights all week long, man. It was a wild one, and we may have another one on deck. So hope you're rested and ready when we get back to Monday.
Oh, yeah, there's more around the corner for sure. Yeah, happy Easter, everybody. Enjoy the weekend, and good wisdom with you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you all for being out there. Again, get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss a thing. Thanks for the time as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.